Call this meeting to order. Tonight we're going to be led in a pledge of allegiance by Miss Elizabeth Etheridge. She's from Smyrna High School, ROTC.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Miss Etheridge. Our moment of silence tonight, I'd like us to remember the families of those who lost their lives in shooting at the shipyard in Washington day before yesterday. So if everybody just remember that. Thank you. Approval of agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Blair and a second by Mr. Nipper. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Approval of consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Holliday and a second by Mr. Young. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 6, visitors. Tonight, I believe we've got 4 visitors. Yeah, we've got 4. So before we get into starting with the first one, I'd just like to basically basically give the guidelines that we generally try to go by. Limit everybody to 3 minutes, and you got the lights up here. When it comes to the second light, I don't know, it's just a matter of seconds before it hits the red light. When it hits the red light, you need to wind it up, or Miss Marshall up here will let you know. Also, I'd like to ask anybody in the audience that just be courteous to the speaker, whether you agree or disagree with their comments, and please refrain from any applause, cheers, boos, or anything like that. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
in the past, we've asked for not only the name but also the address of the speaker, and they do the same thing in the county commission. So I would like for us to go back to what we've done in the past with name and address.
Okay. Also, just one last thing. Any comments that the board wants to comment on any speaker, we'll make comments at the end of the meeting. So, and it won't be a back and forth session. Board good with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. First speaker we have Miss Victoria Attimer. If I missed that.
She hasn't been.
She's not here. Okay. Next we have Mr. John Weaver. Welcome, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you. My name is John Weaver, and I'm a graduate of Oakland High School, 1977. I was actually one of the Mr. Patriots that year. I also graduated from Middle Tennessee State University. And more importantly, I'm gay, and I'm a victim of bullying. It started when I was 10, and I remember the kid that called me that day. I remember his name. I remember where we were. And at 16, sitting in my American history class, I was called a horrible name. And I remember that kid's name. And that night, unbeknownst to my family and friends, I went home and took a lot of pills. And luckily, I survived about 30 minutes later. So I stand before you as a survivor of victimization. I went to MTSU as a freshman after graduating from Oakland and thought the names would stop, and they didn't. And so I stopped going to class, and I actually failed my first year as a freshman at MTSU. I was locked out for a year and then went back and took classes and went back in '87 as a full-time student. And my very first class, the name started again. So the following year, in response to a lot of homophobic articles in the student newspaper, two of my friends that I had made, we stood up for ourselves and we formed the LGBTQ organization that is still there. And next month we celebrate 25 years. And so you need to put the poster back. Save one kid that says, you know, I'm different, I don't understand. But if they know that it's a safe place, then me at 12 and 10 wouldn't have to deal with the bullying that I still with today. And I'm 54 years old, and I still get called names wherever I go, and it happens a lot. And it's ridiculous. It's like, I'm just gay. Leave me alone. I don't hurt you. I don't mess with you. I don't go to your churches and hurt you. So I stand before you as an openly gay man, and I just ask you to put the poster back up. It's not hurting anybody. And I'm also upset that it's a county school and a person who said her religious beliefs or his religious beliefs are the reason he wanted to come down. I pay my taxes here in Murfreesboro. It needs to be put back up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Next, we got Cassie Darnell.
Hello, my name is Cassie Purnell. I'm a Riverdale High School senior and former student of Central Magnet. In the last meeting, a big point that was brought up was that kids are bullied about more than just sexual orientation and their gender identity, and I have no intention to refute that fact at all. However, that doesn't make it less important for us to have these posters. Statistically, LGBT students are more than 3 times as likely to report feeling unsafe in schools than non-LGBT students. The posters are intended to eliminate the difference in that statistic, not to downplay other forms of bullying. In fact, the posters are from GLSEN, whose slogan is Safe Schools for All. Another factor that many have skipped over is that the posters are for more than to protect us from other students, but also to show which teachers are safe for us to go to. If you ask any student, they'll tell you that it's hard to go to an adult when you're being bullied, but it's even harder when you don't know if they'll see it your way or side with your bully. And many have talked about their social opinions, but not many have discussed the legal side of this argument. So I'd like to address a comment made at the first meeting claiming that the posters as student expression were not covered as First Amendment rights. I respectfully disagree. In the case of Tinker versus Des Moines Independent Community School District 39 U.S. 503 in the year 1969, the Supreme Court ruled that as long as there is not substantial disruption of or material interference with school activities, students' freedom to express themselves is indeed protected under the First Amendment. This case's impact still stands, and the Tinker standard is still used to defend expression across the country. Furthermore, in the case of Westside Community Schools versus Morgan's in 1990, ruled that school clubs that are religiously or politically affiliated, including but not limited to LGBT focus groups such as Central Magnet's GSTA, cannot be excluded by any public schools who allow student interest clubs. The court said, quote, "We think that secondary school students are mature enough and are likely to understand that a school does not endorse or support student speech that it merely permits," unquote. To this end, the posters were not put up by the administration as comments suggested. As someone who is a member of the GSTA in her time at Central, I can assure you that the posters, while approved by the administration, were distributed by the GSTA. Therefore, they should not be treated any differently than posters from clubs protected under the same case law, such as the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, whose posters have hung on the bulletin board since Central Magnet opened with no consequence. As a concerned student in Rutherford County and as someone whose closest friends will be affected by the decision in this matter, I hope that you can put aside whatever personal opinions in the LGBT plus community you may have and do what's right for the students of Central Magnet, whose well-being is called into question daily and who need the support of a welcoming community these posters give them access to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Darnell. Next, we have Darrell Whaley.
My name is Darrell Whaley. I reside at 4974 West Trimble Road in Milton. Been there 25 years. I'm 68 years old, and people still call me names. I graduated from Eagle High School in 1962. When I was there, this was the poster that was up. It was a safe place, all-inclusive place. Did y'all see that? This is the one that needs to be back up. I want to commend our school board members, Director Don Odom. You did the right thing by taking it down. It's against school board policy. That's why you're here. That's why you're elected, appointed, is to carry out those policies. And, you know, it's, to me, as a pastor of a church, I've been in the ministry since I was 19 years old. As I said, I'm 68 now. To me, this is a bullying poster. This tells me, as a Christian, stay away. Let me do my own thing. And don't say anything about it. There's not anything on this poster that's going to help a kid's education, that's going to lead them. I've ministered to children in my church, and they've talked to me about, you know, being gay. And they have visited this website, and it enhances their agenda. That's all this poster is all about. For more information and free resources, visit this website. I've dealt with this in those children. I understand the number one bully in America has been called in, the ACLU. Been bullying Americans and judges and Christians for over 50 years now. Started by Roger Baldwin. He was the founder of the ACLU. And this is their agenda. And that's all this poster wants to do, is to advance their agenda, because I have dealt with this firsthand, and I know exactly what it is and what it's doing. God loves the gay, lesbian, and transgender people as much as he loves me. And I guarantee you that. And I love them as much as I love anybody else. But this poster's wrong. It's just wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Wiley. All right, Mr. Odom, number 7.
Number 7, pleased this evening, I'm going to ask Colonel Hutchins, are you going to do the introductions? We have an honor tonight. Huh?
Yes, sir. It's been 5 years since we've had this award presented within Rutherford County. Again, it goes to a cadet, a distinguished cadet from Smyrna High School. And we fall within 7th Brigade, which consists of Indiana, Michigan, Kentucky, and Tennessee. And there's 154 high schools located, junior ROTC programs located within those states. 7th Brigade only gets 4 slots. I mean, able to, based on what the school puts in. They select 4 out of 154 schools. And again, this year, we're privileged to have the award presented to one of our cadets. And at this time, I'll present the senior Army instructor at Smyrna High School, my good friend, Richard Jeffries, and he and I have been serving together for, we're on our 18th year, aren't we, buddy? We're the last one standing.
Yes, sir.
Don't blow it.
Just before I read the certificate, I just want to say a few things about Elizabeth. Elizabeth's in the 4th year of my ROTC program. This year she's a senior. She will graduate with honors. Her ambition is to be a doctor in the military doctor. And that is serving people who are serving. So that is a great ambition for someone of her age. And the remarkable thing about Elizabeth is she's younger than her peers. She is a year younger than the other seniors at Smyrna High School. But that in no way affects her maturity and her ability and the quality of the individual that she is. And just to say a little bit more about Elizabeth, Elizabeth was one of those cadets that I got who was unsure of herself whether she was going to enjoy ROTC or not. It was more of a coercion kind of a thing. Her sister talked her into it. Her sister had been in it, and her mom was saying that this is going to be a good thing for you, and she was a little skeptical about that. But over the course of 3 years and now into her 4th, she has bought into it hook, line, and sinker. And that's what we do in the programs in all the county schools. We are making kids better and keeping that graduation rate high with quality graduates out of this county. So at this time, I'd like Elizabeth to come forward, let you look at the fine young lady, and I would like to read the certificate. The Legion of Valor of the United States of America. To all who see these presents greeting, this is to certify that Elizabeth M. Etheridge has been awarded the Legion of Valor Bronze Cross for outstanding achievement in the Reserve Officers Training Corps program. Given under my hand in the city of Washington, Lieutenant General Richard D. Wanke, Distinguished Service Cross recipient. She talks all the time.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you guys for letting me come out here and present this award to me today. It's a big honor for me to have not only won this award, but to be recognized by the board in Rutherford County. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Smyrna's getting a pretty good reputation for these awards. How many over the years?
Let's see, Elizabeth is the 3rd one.
That's what I was thinking.
And
Great.
if recollection serves, I don't know, have there been any others in the county?
I think I had one from Elem.
Okay, so in the 18 years that I've been here, there have been 4 of them, and 3 of them come from our program. So
Thank you, Colonel Jeffries. That's
I must be
obvious.
doing something right.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else?
Very much so.
I'd like to just thank Colonel Hudgens and Mr. Jeffries on the job you do. It's very refreshing to see an honor like this come to the board, and especially having 3 from one school. I think that says a lot. So I just want to thank both of you. Anybody else?
Well, Colonel Jeffries was a graduate of Smyrna High School, class of 72, and out of that class, I think we had at least 4 colonels and 1 2-star Air Force general. So we had several distinguished officers come out of the class of 72.
All scholarship or military academies?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? All right, Mr. Odom. Great.
Step up to the podium, I think. Chris, if you will. I'm going to share with you some of our scores for 2012-13. The report card's not been released at this time. Probably late October, early November is typically when we see that. But we'd like to give you an update on our scores for 2012-13 and see how we perform, do some comparison with other districts. Begin most things with our mission statement. The mission of Rutherford County School System is to empower today's students to grasp tomorrow's opportunities. That's your mission statement. You adopted along with us and part of our SACs. And that means we have to change, because if we're going to take today's students and empower them for tomorrow's opportunity, as we get the vision of tomorrow, we grasp that we do have to change. Some of our belief statements, and I'll not comment so much on that, but it tells us basically where we are. So let's look at some of the scores and how we're performing. I want to begin because Tennessee is entering the second year of the annual measurable objectives, which is the waiver. Originally, we had No Child Left Behind, and of course that was changed. Tennessee made an application, so it's a 2-year waiver. I think this is the last year of the waiver. So I think Commissioner Huffman has said basically Tennessee has to apply for another waiver. So what that will look like, maybe for next year, we're not sure. But what do we measure? These are the items that we're measured by, the achievement measurements. We're also measured by gap closures in these particular subject groupings with these target subgroups. So there are 4 of these. There are 4 target subgroups for each one of these, so there's 16 gaps that you'll see that we are measured by, because Rutherford County is large enough that we have gaps in all of these areas. At the same time, you are also measured again in these particular areas with these achievement target subgroups. They also work into the process of giving the award. So just kind of an overview quickly to show you that. I want to tell you how do we go about setting achievement AMOs. I'm not going to take a lot of time to do this, but I want to, so that you'll understand how we get it each year, because we've got a new set each year. And this is not a graph of Rutherford County. This is a graph the state provided. So what we're saying, if we simply take a look, say, at District B here, if you've got 60%, this is the explanation kind of for District B here. If you're at 60%, then 40% are not proficient. So under the waiver, you have to cut the non-proficient in half within 8 years of time. So the math of that would be your non-proficient, 60 from 100 is 40. So you're going to have to cut it to 20 by 8 years. When you do the math, you'll have to grow 2.5% per year. That's basically the way it works. So the same way for gap closure is a little bit different. In this case, that you have to cut the gap size in half over 8 years. So this would be a district that maybe a gap was from 30 to 50. So what you would do, the gap then will have to go from 20-point gap down to a 10-point gap in 8 years. So the gap closure would need to be 1.3% per year for gap closure. Now, remind you that every school has a different AMO target. As the district has an AMO target, every school has a different gap closure target. So it's individualized for this process is used for every one of our schools and the district, if you understand. So basically, how did we do? So when you look at where we were for this last year, basically our AMO target, this is our AMO target, the percentage you had to have proficient or advanced. These are the actual proficient and advanced percentages. There's some safe harbor in there. Did the district reduce the number of students scoring basic or below basic by 10% over 1 year, 19% over 2, or 27% over 3? So sometimes, just like with AYP, you'll find in that particular case that safe harbor may kick in. But basically, of all of these particular targets that you see on this particular page, the only one that we did not make was a graduation rate target. And basically, we had a 90.7. It's above the old AYP. Had you had the AYP of 90%, we'd have made our target. But they continue to increase our targets. You've got to have a 95% graduation rate in order for them to say that you're approved and not have to make a higher point on this. That's extremely difficult because, and for several reasons, we're the third largest ELL population in the state. Very large school district, lots of diversity and all in it. So We'd love to have a higher graduation rate, and we've come a long way. We had a higher graduation rate. We've had higher graduation rate than what we had before. But remember, they took away giving the 5th year to special education students, and they took away giving the 5th year to English language learner students. And I'll stand here and tell you, I think that was a real disservice to those students. It was a disservice to the schools that could talk those students into spending the 5th year in high school, and everybody encouraged them to achieve that. But that's a Washington decision, and so, I mean, that's where we are basically now. So we met all but one of those AMO targets, and it's graduation rate, but still above 90%. You see growth, achievement growth from 2011 to 2013, and you see a growth very similar to what's happening at the state. The math 3 through 8 actually has grown more than any. We spend time in instruction, myself, Mr. Zaga, and all, and we try to, why? You know, you're always asking yourself why. And I'm going to say to you tonight, I think one of the reasons is that our teachers, the longest use of Common Core instructional methods with the rigor that goes with it was in math. That's the first group trained. Actually, K through 2 was trained first, and then you did the math piece for it. What we saw last year with this growth, we saw that even though the test isn't aligned to Common Core, it's still the old state standards. The rigor used in the classroom and the problem solving that was taught, I think had a big factor in the fact that you saw that growth, because it teaches children to look at problem solving at a higher level. Algebra is going up. It wasn't too many years ago when I was in, and I'll show you the good and bad tonight, folks. I'm not going to pick and choose. You're going to see the areas we need improvement on too, because everybody has those in any district across the state. It wasn't many years ago we were really, really worried about Algebra 1. Some of you have been here a while that you know that. But even though the test is more difficult to move up, it's now up to 70%, which is very good. Algebra 2 has not been tested as long, but that's really a tremendous jump in a year there for Algebra 2 for those kids. If I had to guess, the most difficult course in high school for most of the average student, it's Algebra 2. It's really tougher than the geometry or many of the others that they have to take, because it incorporates so many difficult concepts in it, and many people would tell you that. We did see English 2 drop down a little bit in the last year. Interestingly enough, that happened all across the state. When I see that, I ask a question, what about the test? Is there any difference in that test when you do it? So got that. Your English 3, again, was a fairly new test, and that's increasing. Once teachers receive a set of standards and know what's expected of them, it's been my experience, and teachers in Rutherford County and other places, our administrators, they will begin to target those standards. They'll begin to move those students to meet the demands of those standards. And that's what you see here. Show me what you want to teach, and I'll do my best to teach it. And I think you'll see that with our teachers. And I just commend them so much for the hard work they're doing. ACT is interesting when you take a look at it. These bars for ACT for Rutherford County was when we didn't test everybody. And so Tennessee in 2010, remember the legislature passed that every student would take the test. So you saw all across Tennessee, you saw this particular pattern change. And this is the composite part of the ACT. We had another change this last year. When you look at this, you say, oh, we did worse last year than we did in 2012. But there's a little statement down here. For the first time, ACT has added extended time students to their calculations of composite and subject level scores. Because of this change, the total composite and subject level scores for 12-13 would not be directly comparable to scores 11-12. The standard time composite and subject level scores will be directly comparable. But the one they're putting out is not the standard time. The added time are basically under some IEPs, some special education students and students are given extra time on the ACT. So up until this, what was done in the spring, those scores were excluded. And so there's considerable difference between that particular set of scores and the others. We actually increased. We went up a tenth in our composite score from what it was in 11-12 when you look at the standard score. So it did go up. But this is still an area of concern for us. As we do our retreat and some stuff, I want to talk to you some more about this as we go through. How about the accountability report for 2013? There were 5 districts exemplary. We were exemplary a year ago. None of the 5 that were exemplary a year ago were exemplary this year. That kind of tells you what's going on in the states. 32 districts were intermediate, 3 districts in need of improvement, and 96 districts identified as in need of improvement for at least one subgroup. The one that caught us, and most people in the state, is need improvement for students with disabilities. That's your special education students. And that comes a lot from your gap closures, dealing with that. So lots of combinations and you begin to see how many areas you're responsible for. And I'll show you another comparison in just a moment to see. Gap closure performance. Gap closure is what got us this year. You have to meet at least half of your gap closures. That's what you have to do. And so last year we had met a half or more. This year we only met 6. And that happened all across the state. When the commissioner announced it, he said gap closures were a problem this year. Now what happens when you have, and gap closure is between, for example, this is the racial ethnic. You compare Black, Hispanic, and Native American together versus the whole student population, or actually it's the non when you get down in this area, but against all students for 3-8 math. And you look at that. And so the gap for 12 was 13%. We reduced it to 12.2. So you see in that gap, we met that gap. The state gap was still 14%. So, and that varies widely from district to district. But here's the issue, and principals tell me, well, we could play this game. The way you could play this game is don't get your achievements up. Because if your achievement goes up to close the gap, suppose you're a special education student. If the achievement goes up by 3%, you've got to go up that 3% plus another virtually 1.3 or whatever your gap closure is, in addition to that, to close your gap. So I don't want to play that game. I want our students to achieve as high as we can possibly get them to achieve. We're all about closing gaps, and we're doing some things, and we're hiring some people to close that gap. But I do not want to sacrifice the high achievement to close the gap. As long as you have high gains in achievement, you're likely to see gaps. That's just a fact, if you kind of understand what I'm doing. And, you know, data doesn't mean anything unless you can compare a little. So I thought I'd do some comparison for you here. Rutherford County Schools, we were not exemplary because of the students with disabilities. Musselburgh City was students with disabilities. Montgomery County, which they compare to us, was students with disabilities. Oak Ridge Schools didn't make it for white, Asian, economically disadvantaged, and English language learners. So they had more of that than we did. Putnam County, which is the Cookeville area, was white, Hispanic, and students with disabilities. Now, they got asterisks there. They evidently did not test 95% of their students. I don't know how they let that happen, because that's one of the things that we really try to watch really closely to make sure you test. Because if you do not test 95% of your students, then you automatically fail. I mean, that's a given. Williamson County was Hispanic, not student with disabilities, but Hispanic. Wilson County was Hispanic, economically disadvantaged, and students with disabilities. So that kind of gives you a comparison of kind of what's going on across the state and what you're looking at. I'm going to talk now about value added. That's the AMO and the achievement piece. The other piece is value added. What is value added? Value added is statistical analysis used to measure the impact of systems, schools, and teachers on the academic progress rates of groups of students from year to year. This is what the teacher effect comes from. This is what the system effect comes from. This is what the school effect comes from. Taking students where they are and how far do you move them. So I want to point out to you here, the above is green. Students in this school or district, whatever it is, make significantly more progress in this subject than students in the average school in the state. Progress was at least 2 standard errors, 2 standard deviations above the standard for academic growth. So you're statistically different. Now, the yellow, you'll see some yellows. The progress of students was not detectably different. Doesn't mean you're necessarily below, but you're kind of average. That's basically what you're saying for that one. So how did we do? Now, here is the SAT 10. That was offered for the first time this last year, and that's our first grade and second grade. And you're seeing, as we look at those particular subjects, this is a spring, the reading. If you look at that, and this is grades 1 and 2, so I was very well pleased that the district versus the state average, we were statistically above in gains. So hats off to those first and second grade teachers for their reading. They're moving the students, certainly above the state average, quite well. And this, again, is first and second for language. That was reading, that was language. Once again, you see they were well above. In fact, I mean, these are phenomenal numbers here. The effect percentile is 92 percentile and 96 percentile. That would kind of be a state comparison, top 10% of the state in moving those. So our first and second grade teachers really did a great job in getting gains for those students, again, very much. How do we do on, again, first and second, taking a look at math. Math was a plus 5.3, still statistically above. 0, so we did about average in the math piece for second grade last year. So that was pretty much average, but the first grade was higher. Let's take a look at a composite score. Now this is Rutherford County's TCAP math, where we can look at 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade all together. Folks, this is really what you want to see. You got 3 years of green, high value added in mathematics in grades 4 through 8. That's what you're looking at when you see that. And that you can measure grades separately, but the thing about when you look at value added is each year there's a different group of students, right, in the grades. So your 4th grade this year will actually be 5th next, be 6th next, and 7th. There's another way you can look at it. If you look, and incidentally, this is available to the public. I mean, this is an online chart. You can go look at it. It's a TVAAS site. What we're saying in this case, a 3rd grade student in 2010 had a statewide normal curve equivalent score, percentile score of 51.5%. When they exited the 6th grade, they had a 61.8%. Now, and that's relative to all students in the state. So you had to pass whatever everybody else improved in the state. You have to pass that to gain it. That's truly taking students beyond. That's the next step. Another group, and that would be a cohort of students. What I thought, another cohort of students in 2010 that were in the 5th grade, 52.5, and by the end of the 8th grade, they were 64.5 in math. So our teachers in grades, again, 4 through 8 there, are doing a phenomenal job of taking kids where they are and moving them forward. Now, that's what you want to see. The area that's a problem for us is reading. And that's the area where we didn't have the value-added gain. 4th, 5th, 6th dropped last year, and 7th for 2 years. The 7th grade test was different this year. The whole state had trouble with the 7th. So, again, but no excuses. That's the area where we need the improvement. And basically we came to you and hired an elementary reading coach, if you remember that, reading specialist. That's one of the things that we're doing to address that, and we'll talk some more about that as we go along. But reading is probably the toughest thing for students. And again, tough, some because of our population with the large number of people that are moving here and the number of people that ELL and that sort of thing. But no excuses again, because our expectations is we've got to get them up, and that's what we've got to do. This happens to be the TCAP composite. The TCAP composite includes reading, math, social studies, and science. So how did we do in 4 through 8 in the composite? And again, you see that all green color there. Very, very good. Very proud of our people again to say in the composite, when you put all 4 subjects together, the one that was a problem was the reading, but you put them all together, even with social studies and science, you're seeing high value added there. Very good to that. Taking a look at our high school Algebra 1 last year, and I love to see these gains and improvement here, the growth measures. When you look at them in 2011 in Algebra 1, I said that was one of our problems. We were kind of in the average range, but last 2 years, and they've gotten better each year. for their Algebra 1 students. Again, statistically above, significantly more progress in this subject than students in the average district in the state. And I copied this from the TVAAS website. That's not my words, that's their words in their measurement for doing that. Algebra 2, again, that was a fairly new test. Again, we went from not really being average. It was in that statistically it's average, but below to a plus 4.0, very much above like that. So I'll say the same thing for our high school math teachers that I was saying about those first and second grade in elementary. They really began to make a turnaround when they focused on it. So very, very glad to see that improvement. High school language arts, there's English 1. That one again is pretty much an average, but it's a positive number, so there was growth. You actually have from minus 1.2, you actually have a 2.1 improvement there from the negative that to the positive. So but that's no detectable difference. English 2, again, even though that growth in English, even though English 2 in the other chart you saw dropped down some, the growth for the students was still positive and statistically above the state average. That kind of tells me that maybe that particular population of students that we're in, and anybody that's taught anyway, it's a really interesting thing, but anybody that's taught any time finds that different student cohorts as they go through school grade have difficulty with different subjects. Don't know why about the human psychic or whatever it is that does that, but there are differences in the students, right, Mr. Tackett? You can see it. This is a tough group of students this year, or this one isn't. This is one of the best group of students. But maybe the English or something was something about that. I don't know. English 3, again, but again, a positive number. Certainly, that's still above the state average, though not statistically above state average. Now, here's one of the things that I want to draw to your attention, because we can look and see how we rank across the state. 29, which is 69% of eligible schools in Rutherford County, scored in the top 25% of the schools in the state for a 3-year value-added scores in one or more subject areas. That's pretty good. Our strength is taking kids where they are and moving them forward. I mean, that's where we do best at. Will not be as high in achievement as maybe a Wilson County or something. Our free reduced numbers are over 40%. Theirs is less than 20. So I just caution you when you look sometime, you're not always comparing apples and apples. There are many other factors. But I'll stand on this. What kids you give me, and can we move them forward and make them achievers? And that's what we're doing. That's what makes the difference. And again, 26% of our schools scored in the top 10%. Now, the eligible schools are everybody basically except Laverne Primary certainly doesn't have any third grade. Your 2 alternative schools do not have that. Stewart's Creek will not have that this year because they don't have 3 years of value in there. There's no comparison for them to do. Stewart's Creek High School. I mean, so that kind of lets you see that. We had this year 10 reward schools. A year ago, we had 7 reward schools. So that's our list this year. Again, progress and performance. Progress would be in the top 5% of the state. Out of all the schools, there's about 1,040 elementary schools when you stop and look at it. But in the top 5% for progress are Barfield and Cedar Grove, Oakland High, and Smyrna Elementary in progress. And Thurman Francis Arts Academy is both for performance and progress. Now, being in the top 5% of the state for overall achievement, you have Central Magnet, Homer Pittard, Lascassas, and McFadden School of Excellence. You kind of see in here some of your magnet schools, just as you begin to see down here for performance also at Stewart's Creek Elementary and performance at Stewart's Creek Elementary. That's really good for Lascassas and Stewart's Creek, especially to come out in the top 5% of the state, and they really do not have magnet population. So again, teachers are really moving some students along in those schools very well. So very proud of that. Another thing that you might find of interest here, that you can go in when you go to the TVAAS website, and you can do what's called a scatter plot. So I took a scatter plot. how do we look across the state? Each one of those little yellow dots represents a school district in the state of Tennessee, about 136 of them. So I ask it to plot growth versus achievement. Now, growth would be your vertical axis. Your horizontal axis is achievement. Now, what that says is the achievement is entering achievement. That's where you start the year. That's where the students start. So in Williamson County, starting the year, the students started about 64%. But after they do that, now, so 0 would be no growth. So everybody above this line did have growth. But if you'll look up here, you'll find that Rutherford County was actually 3rd in the state for growth in mathematics across our grades. So that's a comparative chart for you to take a look at. It's interesting. Remember, Memphis, look how low. And hats off to the people in Memphis here. Sometimes they don't get anything but criticism. But look at their growth. Now, their kids are starting out at less than 40%. But look at how they're adding value to them. Something's going on well, you know. And the same is kind of true of Shelby County. But you kind of begin to see that. So you can see that we did better than a lot of other named systems in growth. All right, here's another one that's interesting here. This is the Sat 10 Spring total reading. This would be the first grade. And on this particular chart, and I'm not sure who, let me go back on it. I'm not sure exactly who the others are, but we're about 2nd and the 3rd again for the first grade in reading growth across the state. Again, those first grade teachers did a bang-up job. 2nd grade total reading there, we're actually right here at the top again. And when I say top, I'm not saying entering achievement. I'm saying how much did we add to you teaching during this year? How much did we taken you where you are and moved you forward? And the chart speaks for itself there. So another thing that we want to take a look at, here's district level evaluation composites, and it's on that rank from 1 to 5. And it includes all of these subjects, elementary subjects, secondary subjects, that sort of thing. So how did Rutherford County, how do we do? Our 3-year trend is all 5s. Our 2-year trend is a 5. And a 1-year trend is a 5. So we're 5 compared across the state in 1, 2, and 3-year trends. Now, teacher effect scores are 1 through 5. So, and all of this is based, school levels are based on that. But that by itself doesn't necessarily mean a lot to you. So let me kind of go another step, because when I began to look at this, I said, gosh, did we do a lot? Our index gain is the height of the gain. Are we really getting that much worse? And even though we're still a 5, and that's a very positive number, is that so? I pulled something for you here. Here's ours again. The index. How much is that gain? These others qualified for a 5 also. But how much is that gain? I mean, how strong is that gain? Here's Williamson County. You can compare your numbers if you want to. We're moving them faster. Here's Wilson County. They're 5s. We're moving them faster. Montgomery County, Oak Ridge, we're moving them faster. Your teachers are teaching their hearts out. School effect. So in the school effect, when you take a look at that, of our eligible schools that receive a school effect, 38 of 42 RCS schools, or 90% of them, have a 3-year effect score of 5 for the overall composite. 90% of your schools scoring a 5. Pretty good comparison. Take a look at that. All right. What's our AMO targets for 2014? Share that with you. So, you celebrate for a few minutes and then you go back to the game plan. That's the way you play the athletics, and that's the way you have to do it in instruction too. So for you here, and you're going to receive a copy of this PowerPoint. I mean, you've got this with all these slides, so you can go back and mark and see your numbers, because my evaluation is based on how we do. So you're going to have all of that there to see. So these are our new targets for 2014 for the district level. And again, the schools are different. We got some schools, we get to some of our magnet schools, and golly, their AMO target is 97, 98%, 99. If they have one kid that's not proficient, they're not going to make their AMO. I mean, it's just really tough, but it goes up every year. By that, you saw the gap closure or the growth score based on what it takes to cut the non-proficient in half over an 8-year period of time. So you get to see that, but every school has one of these, and every principal gets a copy for their school. There's our gap closures. That happens to be our 2014 gap closure targets. And again, you go to a lot of districts, and they only have 4 gap closures, 6 gap closures, but because of our size, because of our diversity, we have 16 gap closures that we're responsible for, because we have some in every group up there when you stop and take a look at it. And that's kind of where we are. Any questions or anything concerning that? Very proud of our people, very proud of the growth that they're showing, the gains they're showing for students. Thank you.
I wish that we had a quiz to give out to these folks out here to see if they can pass half of that. I mean, you recognize how complicated it has become. And I just say that to say this. We are very fortunate in this system to have people that understand this at the level that our director does, that the people sitting at these tables right to my left do, the teachers you've already identified in place. And there's just so many things that sometimes people don't understand when they start looking at the thing. For example, we're talking about a very fluid student population. So when we test these kids, they may not have started with us. And I always felt like when I was at Oakland, if you could just give me the kids that came to me the first day of the 9th grade year and told me what my graduation rate for those kids were at the end of the 12th grade year, I could live with that. But when you got a student that comes in March with 2 credits and they're 17 years old, they're going to count against your graduation rate, and there's something about that that's innately not fair. So we keep that in mind, and a lot of these kids that you get tested on that may not do particularly well started in a different school district. Right. That's why I'm a proponent of Common Core. I think the idea that students that will come in more and more and more in line with what our teachers are teaching in our system from where they come from, because they're, I don't know what the grade book would be, but you start with 20 in first grade, and in the school year, you probably got entries of 40 or 45 kids that are there. And it's just a great challenge. But I really want to say we're so fortunate in this system. We've got people that understand this, because I cannot believe that in the 137 systems in this state, that every system has people that really understand this process to the level that they can really break it down and then have a chance to make it work.
I put our administrators against any group of administrators in the state that understand the data, but I mean, they live with us for several years, and so we train them, we work on it, we follow up on it. We're currently now having bridge conferences with 46 principals. We bring them in here one at a time, and we look at last year's scores. We look at their AMO scores this year. We talk about where you had problem last year. What's our plans? We require every principal, if you have any AMO you did not meet last year, gap closure or achievement goal, you have to write us a school improvement plan for that gap closure. In other words, you got to make your plan and then work your plan. And so everybody has that. We had to do it for the state, and I got back yesterday, our plans approved for the state for the gap closures we didn't do. So every one of our schools have to do a school improvement plan in order to do that. So
I don't want to dominate the conversation, but I think we've got to keep in mind that we do all those things academically, while at the same time dealing with issues that we have been discussed earlier tonight about how we take care of bullying issues, how we make kids comfortable in school, how we keep schools safe, all those kind of things. I mean, the challenge is not just academic, it's the whole child, and that's what we have to be careful that we don't get so caught up in academics, and people think teach to the test is something that gets attacked a lot, but we've got to teach the children, and I do think our teachers do an exceptional job of doing that and recognizing that to get to the academic side of things, you've got to make sure that you let kids feel safe, feel nurtured, feel important, and that's a really tough job to do with some of these kids who come from very, very, very tough backgrounds.
I follow up on one of your earlier statements, and I'll stop. When I recently addressed our whole staff across the system, we did it through our TV and interconnected. our teachers, when you stop at that, we got 1,387 new students this year. Last year it was over 1,000. You've got normal mobility, people who move in and out. You graduated over 3,000 students. You brought into kindergarten almost another 3,000 students. And I even told the commissioner this. I said, Rutherford County teachers in 10 months have got to move between 5,000 and 6,000 new students to another level. That's what they got, 10 months to do it. I've never seen as much pressure on the individual teacher in the classroom as I'm seeing now, and even administrators and all too. It is really a pressure cooker environment. Our people are doing it, and doing it miraculously.
Anybody else? Mr. Holliday?
Mr. Odom, I was going to ask, how many gap closure categories are there?
16.
So
We don't have to.
we're doing every single one of them?
We do.
Okay. I was also struck by your statement and our system's emphasis that we not sacrifice high achievement in favor of the gap closure. The gap closure is certainly an excellent tool for us to use to identify where we need to spend attention, but in the final analysis, achievement is what we're about, and I applaud your emphasis there. And I want to possibly in the retreat or at some time, that may even be something that we need to incorporate into to our goals, as a system that we intentionally say that high achievement, gap closure, sure, but high achievement is the prevailing emphasis. I was also struck by your talk about teach to the test. And while you didn't say teach to the test, what you said was clear expectations. Sometimes we get criticism of teach to the test, but you showed very clearly there in the analysis that when there are clear expectations, the expectations are met and achieved. And so another way of saying teach to the test is give clear expectations. And that's a really positive thing for us to do. And I think that's something particularly worth noting. The last thing is, I think it is so important for us to understand, and the area where we fell short in gap closure with special education students. We can talk about a national perspective versus schools in Sweden or schools in Finland or schools in the Far East. Nowhere else in the world is the invitation to all students, no matter what the challenges are, no matter what the disabilities are, from age 3 to 22, we've discussed before, the responsibility that we take on as a public education system for each and every child to be educated to the highest possible outcome is just enormous. And because of that, regardless of what test data may show, we're still the finest education system in the world, public education in the United States of America.
Anybody else?
I'll just say that if you're a teacher and an administrator in today's environment with the challenges and like Mr. Tackett said, how complex it is, you're doing it because you love children. You're not going to make a lot of money. You're going to spend a lot of hours. You're going to do a lot of paperwork. And you're going to be judged extremely high. And if you're teaching, if you're an administrator, you love children.
Anybody else?
I just like to say it was very impressive. These numbers look very good. I'm just astonished that you guys are able to accomplish what you accomplish under the circumstances sometimes, but you guys are doing a great job.
All right, Mr. Odom.
I'll make one statement as a follow-up, and I can't remember the famous person that made the statement. When the water in the bay rises, all the boats rise. If you keep your focus and your target high, and you do that achievement, even the ones that are a little bit below are going to rise with that water too.
Yes,
So I
sir.
think that's why the rigor and all has to be there.
Number
Okay,
9.
facilities.
Number 9.
Okay, and this is our facilities, number A, Blackman High School Eagle Scout project. Ms. Gail Vick has requested approval of construction of a rugby storage building on Blackman High School campus by Scout Cade Hunter, a junior at Blackman High School, to fulfill his Eagle Scout requirements. The proposed storage building will be constructed beside the soccer storage building and built exactly like it. It will be wood construction and approximately 10 feet by 16 feet. It will be constructed at no cost to the Rutherford County School Board. Recommend approval. Motion to approve construction of a 10-foot by 16-foot rugby storage building by Cade Hunter as an Eagle Scout project at Blackman High School at no cost to the board.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Holliday and a second by Mr. Tackett. Any further discussion on this? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. B.
B is proposed greenhouse at Oakland High School. Mr. Bill Spurlock, principal of Oakland High School, has submitted a request for permission to construct a 28 feet by 48 feet greenhouse for use by the Agriculture Department. The proposed greenhouse would be constructed between the auto shop building and existing special education greenhouse. Rutherford County Engineering and Construction Department has investigated the location. There is no trouble with gas, water, and electricity connections. All associated costs, including construction and local and state permits, will be paid by Oakland High School at no cost to the Rutherford County School Board. Recommend approval. Motion to approve construction of a 28 feet by 48 feet greenhouse at Oakland High School for use by the Agriculture Department. The greenhouse will be funded through FFA club fundraisers at no cost to the board. I did make a contact based upon Ms. Blankenship's last night thing. So we called Bill Spurlock, Mr. Clardy and I did this morning. And there is a greenhouse, I think may have been put there with ARA funds early. But he said they were already operating when they had their Saturday sales and all. Part of the day Special Ed was running it. Part of the day FFA was running it. So he said it had no intention at all. It just gives them additional capacity to raise more, more things that they can offer to the public for sale. So he guaranteed me that it would not harm special ed sales too. You have a phenomenal special education comprehensive teacher out there that really is Ms. Blankenship, great grant writer, got these kids involved and interested in the greenhouse, working with the FFA. It's a really good combination there.
You've heard the motion.
For approval.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Young and a second by Mr. Holliday. Any further discussion on this? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. C.
C is Stewart's Creek High School baseball dugout. Dr. Clark Harrell has requested approval for construction of the extension of baseball dugouts and safety rails at Stewart's Creek High School baseball field. Stewart's Creek Baseball has been awarded a Richard Siegel Foundation grant to extend the existing dugouts and install a railing for added safety. Construction of these items will be very similar to the renovation of Siegel High School dugouts completed by the Siegel Booster Club. Dr. Harrell has plans to install a rail and net at the softball dugouts in the near future, thus keeping gender equity in balance. Pictures are presented for the board's use. The construction will be funded through the grant at no cost to Rutherford County School Board. Recommend approval. Motion to approve extension of existing dugouts and addition of safety rails at Stewart's Creek High School baseball field to be funded through a grant from the Richard Siegel Foundation at no cost to the board.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Blair and a second by Mr. Nipper. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 10.
Number 10 is tenure recommendation, and this will be our first one's really on the new model for tenure. The following teachers meet the criteria for tenure in accordance with the new tenure law. 1, they have to hold a valid Tennessee teaching license. They have to serve in Rutherford County schools for 5 years or 45 months within a 7-year period, and the last 2 in a regular, not an interim position, and has demonstrated an overall performance of above expectations or significantly above expectations. That means they had to score 4 or 5 on their team evaluation during the last 2 consecutive years of the 5-year period. And those teachers are Melissa Brock, Jennifer Deal, Jason Harvey, Brittany Helton, Jessica Little, Michelle Petty, Jamie Shalarda, Lisa Tate, Sedona Thompson, and Brett Throneberry. Recommend approval. Motion to approve the recommendation of the Director of Schools to award tenure to the teachers who meet criteria for 2013.
Mr. Odom, I think Pamela Morgan's on there also.
Okay, I'm sorry I missed that one.
Heard the motion.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Nipper and a second by Mr. Blair. Any further discussion, Mr. Holiday?
We had some discussion last evening in the work session about just how challenging it is to get this tenure recommendation under the new rules. I know we have some teachers in attendance this evening, and we certainly want to commend these teachers for achieving this. And the discussion last evening in understanding this was just that, to fully understand and appreciate the challenges and the role of the board in order to accomplish this. And, with a lot of excitement, am embracing, recommending this approval.
Anybody else? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 11 is just everyone's homework. Review your policy manual. These items here. Number 12, Mr. Odom.
Number 12 is insurance update, and it is for information only. The insurance department has clarified that the 2014 wellness upcharge for employees will be a total of $250 or $31.25 for 8 months for Board of Education employees. For county employees, others will be $25 for 10 months for other county employees. The wellness upcharge will begin in March 2014. Employees can avoid paying this upcharge by getting a biometric screening that includes a lipid panel, CPT code 861, which measures your LDL, HDL, triglycerides, and total cholesterol by February 17, 2014. A biometric screening lab test done earlier in 2013 that includes the CPT, again, will count for this requirement. These employees should contact their personnel physician to confirm that they had this test and that CPT 861 was used. And that has been communicated to all of our employees through all RCS email.
Ms. Barnes, do you or Mr. Sandvik have anything further on this?
Just that we'll send that same information out 2 or 3 more times before that cutoff in February. Make sure, and then come out and open enrollment also.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Young?
What kind of feedback are we getting from our employees about this? Are they satisfied with what we're?
Not necessarily happy. Just Sammy gave me something today from another state. But I mean, it is happening in business and industry. I think all over the country. And the interesting thing is you have to turn it in, but if it's not good, there's no punishment. I mean, if your cholesterol is too high. But the idea is that they would then contact you and offer maybe some assistance, in trying to get it down. So it's a screening tool to try to make your employees healthier. So with a negative incentive if you don't do that. That's what it amounts to.
My concern is it's giving the insurance company more information to rate the employees, and it's going to make our costs go up. But that is what it is. So.
Costs are going to go up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's just part of the national trend. What I do hope is that with the screening that it'll be, more of a preventative, your levels are going in a different direction, and you may need to change your lifestyle. You may not need to drink as many soft drinks or maybe a little portion control. I've certainly been trying to do that myself. So I do hope it winds up being a positive effect for our employees, that they will become healthy because they need to be healthy.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sandvik?
When we started the HRA screening several years ago, and a lot of employees were taking part at first, one of the things that I didn't expect was we found employees with serious cases of diabetes or heart issues, and they were totally unaware of them. So there can be those pluses in it too for some of our employees.
Anybody else? Number 13, Mr. Odom.
Number 13, sixth grade curriculum, and this is for information only. Several months ago, we began talking about the sixth grade social studies book and its study of the 5 major religions. We've had a group of teachers and Barbara Powers, who is our middle school coordinator, looking at this and seeing what we can do with this book. There's the new adoptions will be for next year, but we do have this one for another year. So the committee did go through it, and you have on your iPads, or the public can also see it too, the cover letter, basically what they did. And one of the things that I think occurred last year that bothered people was maybe too much internet use. So the last paragraph, it says the teacher created chart for organizing facts related to the 5 major religions is included in these guidelines, along with partially completed charts. The textbook provides sufficient facts for chart completion. Internet sources are strongly discouraged in teaching these religions. And you began sharing this today with the middle school principals, because they're the ones that have the 6th grade. The middle school principal was today, and so you went over this with those middle school principals today, doing that. The other pages are really the middle 2 pages, 3 pages in this that's been scanned in is the specific indicators that's currently required teachers to teach. This is the state SPIs, what they call. So they are there. We did include in the last page, because in the conversation from the public and those that came to our meeting back several months ago, did like, I think, much of the chart, because it did lay out kind of the 5 major religions, the who, what, when, and where, that sort of information. So the last chart you've got is kind of handwritten in, what you might look for, or what might be the comparison thing for teachers to look at when they complete that chart. And again, this is so students can answer the questions when they take the social studies TCAP test. So hopefully this will address many of the issues that we have with people going internet and other places to do that, to try to confine it more to the who, what, when, and where that we're required to teach for those specific standards.
I went back and looked at some previous emails, and we started that discussion back in March, and here we are at a place where we're kind of having some specific impact and some training directly into the classroom and the application. At the same time, the textbook adoption process is in the public disclosure and public review process for textbook adoption, I believe in the 14-15 school year. For the 14-15 school year. And so, all of that is ongoing. It may seem like it moves slowly at times, but perhaps intentionally at a pace that allows for us to carefully consider and make these decisions.
Anybody else? 14.
14 is Collaborative Conferencing Committee, and this is for information only. Pursuant to Section Tennessee Code 495-605, the professional educator organization is required to appoint management personnel, that's their management personnel, to serve on the committee. Professional educators serving on the Collaborative Conferencing Committee are Emily Mitchell, Derek Bowman, Sandra Magoo, Regina Harvey, Alan Nichols, Carol Hawkins, and Jim Gifford. Some of those are with us tonight. So this is for your information about who will be meeting with our people in the collaborative conference. How many meetings have you had so far this year? 2 since school started?
Any comments? 15.
15 are some board appointments that I think your chairman made, Mr. Hodge made. One is the Federal Relations Network representative is board member Aaron Holliday. And B, the Tennessee Legislative Network representative will be board member Wayne Blair.
I'll just make a general comment in regards to that. Most of the board's probably aware of it. Mr. Blair's did this for several years now. and he's been very active, not only on a state level, but also the federal level. So Mr. Holiday, as I mentioned the other night, he's agreed to do the federal, and Mr. Blair is going to continue on with the state. So, and he brings back a lot of feedback to us of what's going on and what we can expect, and especially with TSBA, your involvement with them is definitely a plus for us. So I want to thank both of you for agreeing to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
General discussion.
Yeah, I guess my comment would be, I would like for us to continue to talk and educate the public about Common Core, because I think there's still quite a bit of misconception, regarding it, and the more that we can talk about it and exposed to it, I think it'll make acceptance that much easier. There's just a lot of talk, and I think some of it is not is informed. So
I don't think, and I've made it as plain as I know, I support Common Core. I'll say that here. One, because I saw some things that the level of instruction I'm seeing is going up. It's been politicized. It was really originally created by state officers, chief officers of state education. Common Core right now is only reading, language arts, and math. And you can go to the national site and see it. And for several reasons. One, we have so many kids that move all the time from state to state. It's very nice that other people are having, when they move from somewhere else, they've covered some of the same materials. You've got that. It's going to facilitate better comparison among states. Are we really as good as we think we are or not? Because you're going to be testing over some of the same background. The standards are rigorous. I'm going to make another prediction for you. At the end of 14-15, scores will go down again. Every time you have new standards, until those teachers get used to it, until they can build upon it, you'll see a decline, and then you'll see a movement back up with that. But I ask people very specifically, here's what I want you to tell me. Look at this standard. Take the standards one at a time. Tell me what's wrong with that standard. Now, I get global talk about, oh, this was done by somebody else, is done with that. But I have to get through all of that, and I have to come down to it. Okay, if this is the standards we're going to hold our kids responsible for, tell me what's wrong with that standard. Is it not a good standard? Or how would you improve that standard? Now, the alternative is to go back to where we were. Every state, which is somewhat of a hodgepodge of what we think is important and what's not. So focusing on that makes it. Now, the 19th and 20th, the Senate Education Committee is conducting hearings in Nashville. We've basically been told that opposition to Common Core is busing people in from out of state now, even to do it. So I don't know. I don't know how that will be. But there will be a very strong movement this year to try to get Tennessee to drop out of Common Core. I mean, that's a very obvious situation that I think is going to happen. But again, my statement is, what's wrong with that standard? Tell me how you can write a better standard or a different standard. What's wrong with what we're asking that student to know and the teacher to teach? Look at it from that angle.
If we look at Common Core issues and listen to the criticism, one of the things that comes up is the level of data collection that is ongoing for our students. And it's absolutely critical that we be aware of that and that we be good stewards of that information. But that information is what allows us to look at those gap closures and identify where those specific areas are that we need to emphasize. We are not able to target our efforts without having that level of information about each and every student. You have to ask the question and get the answer in order to be able to identify where attention needs to be spent. So I think that that is certainly a worthy criticism. It's something that we should be incredibly aware of, but I think, again, Rutherford County Schools is doing an excellent job of keeping our information confidential and using it in the right way. If we withdraw from the process, if we withdraw from Common Core, then we lose our ability, which is very, very strong right now, to be able to influence how Common Core continues to affect our educational system going forward. Leaving the Common Core process is not in the best interest for the students of the state of Tennessee, because it will still impact the ACT and educational system of the majority of our country.
When you look at a test sheet that's bubbled in for a student to take their test on TCAP for years, their name is basically on there, what school they're in, what grade they're in. It does ask if you're what is your ethnic, which is part of the comparison there. That information is there. Is it a special ed student? And all. Now, no one sees that, but people in the school system is done. As far as I know, that's the only thing that's reported to Washington and beyond is the aggregate of that. In other words, not individual, but aggregate. But one of the nice things about the TVAAS system, which is the value added, a principal or a teacher can take their students and go into it, and there's kind of a dashboard, and you go in and you can look at the students that just walked into my classroom. How have they done in the past? What subject is their difficult area? And we can even go into a projection and say, if things stay as they are, is this student projected to be proficient or below proficient? Well, it lets you on the very front end and very early say, in the school year, again, you got 10 months to move them. See, it lets you say early in the school year, this is a population of students that we need to set up an intervention for, which is part of the PLCs. Those of you that have looked at professional learning communities, one of the biggest pieces of that is, take students and then develop an intervention for those that need an intervention immediately. So the quicker we can get that information, it's the same thing doctors do, folks. I mean, you don't want to say, take an aspirin and call me tomorrow. You want them to do a test on you to see what's ailing you, and then prescribe a specific medicine for them. So we need to know what student, what skill is deficit, and you know what? We can teach it. We can get that group of students together and then intervene for them and make them better students. I mean, education has changed so much in the last 10 or 15 years. It is direct, it's focused, and it's down to by student, by skill, to help students get better. Coaches have done it for years. If you have trouble dribbling, they're going to drill you on dribbling or whatever your issue is. And we're finally catching up in the educational realm, the academic piece.
Follow up on that, former coach that I am. You don't think coaches don't take game film and study it to figure out where the weakness is to address, you'd be absolutely wrong. So I think that statement is right on target.
Ms. Holder?
Lest we end this meeting without addressing those who came with visitor comments, as always, thank you for the comments that were made and for your presence and help. I think the issues that were raised this evening are still issues that are before the board and that are being considered. I was wanting to note the visitor comments that came back in March that the board has now been able to work on and get some emphasis into the classroom. Again, sometimes it feels like the process takes a long time, but perhaps it's at the pace that allows us to make correct and careful decisions.
If I may, I want to follow up on that. First, just say to Mr. Weaver, what has happened to you is wrong. It was wrong then, it's wrong today, it's wrong in schools, it's wrong in society. And that's what I think we're trying to accomplish. the method of accomplishing that can be debated. But I think what we want to do is accomplish that, kind of going back to my statement before. If kids don't feel safe in school, if they don't feel nurtured in school, they're not going to achieve in school. We know that. And so it's got to be our goal as teachers and as educators and as school board members to do everything we can to make schools as safe as we can for every student. My experience as an administrator, and I think sometimes we can get so close to it, is if you are the one that's bullied or the one that is subject to that, you kind of recognize. My experience there was the special ed kids are the ones who get subjected to so much of that kind of thing. I didn't grow up in the South. I'm still shocked by the racial prejudice that I see around Murfreesboro and Rutherford County. Didn't grow up in that kind of society. The biggest issues that typically we had to deal with were racial. I recall very much the issue that was brought up about students' ability for free speech and so forth. The rebel flag T-shirts that we had to deal with when I was principal at Oakland, and how we had to ask people not to wear them because they inflame so much. There's just so many things that are there. So, I mean, our goal has got to be, and I think as a board, and it's Saturday, I think we should definitely attempt to do what we can to be sure that every teacher understands that our job is to make everybody feel as safe as we can make it. I'm not convinced that that sign in a classroom tempers that. As I say, there's so many things that have to be attacked. But please know that, at least me personally, it's not an anti-gay, anti-lesbian, anti-anything kind of situation. Every kid needs to feel safe, and that includes that group of students or any others that happen to be there. And I think there's still some miscommunication that because the sign is not up, that there's some idea that we don't want to protect those students. And that, nothing, at least from my standpoint, could be farther from the truth. We absolutely need to protect every student. And that's what our goal needs to be.
Anybody else?
Saturday also is the Kittrell homecoming reunion for any graduate or anybody who has attended Kittrell School in the last, even since the breakup of the Oakland and Riverdale. So please, anybody out there, if have attended Kittrell, please take time to go out and go visit with them. It's from 10 to 2.
Thank you. Mr. Tackett, if you don't mind, elaborate on your charter schools on Monday, not only for the board, but also general public.
Sure. Monday at 2:30 here in the boardroom, the appeal to the State Department of Education will be heard here. We received an application for a charter school back in May, I believe, something like that, and we reviewed as a committee that application and denied that charter school. They appealed back to us, sent some more information to us. We reviewed that, and upon appeal, we still recommended to the board, and the board has acted to not accept that charter school. They have taken the next step to appeal that at the state level, and that hearing will take place at 2:30 on Monday. It is a public hearing for folks that would like to be here for that. We'll, as a committee, present to those that are here from the state our position, and the charter school folks will certainly present theirs. And that decision then will be made, and we expect within something like 10 days, that decision then would be finally made up or down. And if it goes to where the charter school is accepted by the state, then we'll come back and go to work, see how we make that work best for our school system and our students.
I'll be here in the boardroom,
Be
correct?
here at 2:30 on Monday.
Yeah. Anybody else? Nothing else, we're adjourned.